They say we've mapped space pretty well by now, but what if an entire planet was hiding behind our own moon? This terrifying idea seemed like a crazy conspiracy theory, until astronomers around the world detected something strange. The readings suggested that something massive was passing behind the moon, shifting its gravity ever so slightly, and when they calculated the size of this object, their jaws dropped. It was roughly the same size as Earth. So is there a secret planet hidden in our solar system? How did it go undetected for so long? And what will happen when people find out it exists? Let's take a closer look at this amazing discovery. For decades, scientists believed the moon was our only natural satellite. Then in 1976, we discovered the first moon of the planet Mars, Phobos. Since then, we found countless moons of other planets, and even some dwarf planets have their own moons, and yet we still didn't find another moon for Earth. Or did we? It all started with an anomaly detected by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Scientists were checking data from the Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory, or GRAIL, a twin spacecraft mission designed to map the moon's gravity field. While looking through the data, they noticed something odd. The measurements showed that the moon's gravity fluctuated more than expected. At first they thought maybe it was a measurement error, but then they realized there was something off about the orbit of the moon. You see, since the moon rotates on its axis once every 27 days, the side facing away from us is always the same. In other words, the moon is locked to Earth. The reason this happens is because millions of years ago, something huge crashed into the moon and knocked it out of its synchronous orbit. Since then, the moon has been drifting away from us at a rate of 3.8 centimeters per year. But here's where things get weird. When the scientists compared the measurements from the GRAIL satellites with past observations, they realized that the moon hasn't moved away from Earth as much as it should have, and that was just the first piece of the puzzle. As it turned out, the moon's orbit isn't the only thing that's off. According to calculations, the moon should have cooled down a lot more than it did. Scientists know that inside the moon is a core made mostly of iron, and this core generates a magnetic field which extends far beyond the moon's surface. Using special satellites, astronomers were able to map this magnetic field and determine the moon's internal structure. All of this was done to understand whether the moon has a liquid or solid core, because if it's liquid, then the moon could generate enough heat to slow down its drift away from Earth. But if the moon's core is solid, then it wouldn't explain why it doesn't drift away faster. And here's where the story takes a turn for the worse. While mapping the magnetic field, astronomers noticed that the moon's south pole contains a lot more iron than the rest of its surface. What's more, the magnetic field here doesn't behave like it should. All of this suggests that there are vast deposits of iron or hidden beneath the lunar crust. But how did they get there? And what's going on with the moon's core? To get to the bottom of this, scientists decided to send a crew to the moon to drill deep under its surface. This mission was called the International Robotic Exploration of the Moon, or ORAM. Its main objective was to study the chemical composition of the moon's core. And you won't believe what the robots found down there. A few weeks after launch, the robotic probe reached the moon and began drilling. First, they drilled through the lunar soil, which is rich in silicon, magnesium, and calcium. Then they hit a layer of solid iron, but as soon as they broke through it, they were in for a big surprise. Underneath was a vast ocean of liquid iron. But how could such a small rocky body have a liquid iron core? Before scientists could figure this out, the probe sent back one last image before going silent. It was a view of a huge underground lake filled with water. The discovery of water was shocking, to say the least. Most scientists agree that billions of years ago, the Earth and the moon were much warmer than they are today. So perhaps the moon had oceans of its own. However, over time, the moon would have cooled down, causing the water to freeze. That would also explain why the moon's core stayed liquid for so long. But there's a catch. The volume of the underground lake doesn't add up. It's simply too big to be just water. Scientists suspect that there may be some sort of exotic substance that we don't know about. Whatever it is, it keeps the moon's core liquid and affects its gravity. But that's not the craziest part. After further analysis, the team noticed that the lake wasn't quite where they expected it to be. It was shifted slightly toward the center of the moon. And here's where things get really interesting. According to calculations, this shift is exactly what would happen if something massive was hiding behind the moon. At first, the team thought maybe the moon collided with an asteroid or comet, but this would have left visible scars on its surface, and the moon looks surprisingly pristine. So whatever it is, it must have hit the moon at just the right angle to avoid leaving any marks. But what if instead of an asteroid, there's another planet behind the moon? It seems crazy, but hear me out. Scientists believe that there's a planet whose mass is comparable to Earth's. They call it Planet 9 or Planet X. It's never been seen directly, but its gravitational pull can be seen affecting objects in the Kuiper Belt. And according to some estimates, Planet 9 orbits the Sun in a highly elliptical orbit that brings it close to the Moon at certain points. This raises several questions. Why does Planet 9 orbit the Sun in such a peculiar way? And how can it affect the Moon without leaving its orbit? And most importantly, why haven't we seen it yet? You see, although the Moon rotates the Earth roughly every 27 days, its orbit isn't perfectly circular. At certain points, it's closer to Planet 9 than at others. Scientists believe that Planet 9's gravity pulls the moon out of its orbit and causes it to wobble. This could explain the moon's irregular rotation and the observed fluctuations in its gravity. What's more, these fluctuations in gravity could explain why the moon has retained its atmosphere over billions of years. After all, an atmosphere is nothing but gas molecules bouncing off a planet's surface due to its gravity. In addition, Planet 9 could explain the origin of the moon itself. According to the giant impact hypothesis, the moon formed after a young Earth collided with a Mars-sized planet. Some pieces of this planet merged to form the moon. But there's no evidence of such a collision. Perhaps Planet 9 was the culprit. If it knocked Earth out of its orbit and caused it to collide with the hypothetical planet, but where is it hiding? The answer surprised scientists. To find Planet 9, the team used data from various telescopes and tried to reconstruct its orbit. And here's what they found. Planet 9 orbits the Sun in a very elongated orbit that's inclined relative to Earth's orbit. What's interesting is that the planet is never far from the moon. In other words, Planet 9 is orbiting the moon. But how did it end up there? One theory is that Planet 9 was kicked out of the solar system of Alpha Centauri, a neighboring star system similar to ours. Perhaps it was ejected during a close encounter with another star. Or maybe it was already wandering in interstellar space and happened to wander into our solar system. Either way, it ended up bound to the moon's gravity and now it's stuck in orbit around it. But wait a second. Does this mean that the moon isn't the only thing hiding a secret? And if so, what else is going on down there? When the robotic probe went silent, scientists tried everything they could to contact it again, but it was too late. The probe had crashed into the lake. Fortunately, the probe had one last chance to transmit data before crashing, and as it descended into the lake, it took pictures of the surrounding landscape. The images were astonishing. Beneath the surface of the moon is a world much like our own. There are mountains, valleys, forests, and even seas. And judging by the trees, this world is full of life. But what kind of life forms exist there? Unfortunately, the probe didn't live to find out. But the images revealed another incredible detail. On the surface of the probe, you can see huge structures that resemble ancient ruins. These structures clearly weren't natural. They looked like some kind of towers or statues. Whoever built them knew advanced technologies that we can only dream of today. What's more, the probe detected strange radio signals coming from these structures. It was too faint to decipher, but it seemed to be some kind of message. Perhaps the builders of these ruins left behind some kind of record of their achievements, and if we can find it, we'll be able to learn a lot about our solar system's history. But wait, do these ruins mean that there's some kind of civilization hiding under the moon? And if so, what do they want? The truth is, the probe discovered traces of an ancient civilization that was millions of years ahead of ours. Judging by the technology it left behind, this civilization flourished on the moon long before humans appeared on Earth. But where did it go? Although the probe didn't capture any images of intelligent life, it did detect strange radio signals. It was faint and distorted, but it seemed to be some kind of message. Was the probe being watched the whole time? While sending the pictures to Earth, the probe's systems started malfunctioning. First, the temperature sensor failed, then the camera stopped working altogether. Was someone trying to stop the probe from transmitting the images? When the probe finally reached the lake and lost contact with Earth, its last images showed a huge city in the distance. And although we couldn't hear it over the static, the probe picked up strange sounds, almost like voices. Whatever was happening, it was clear that the probe was in danger. If it got too close to the mysterious city, it could be destroyed. Unfortunately, we'll never know what happened next. But one thing is for sure, there's an alien intelligence hiding under the moon. It's unclear how advanced it is or what its goals are. Maybe it's peaceful and just wants to be left alone, or maybe it's dangerous and poses a threat to humanity. But one thing's for sure, this discovery changed our view of the universe forever. Now we know that we're not alone in the cosmos, and who knows what other wonders are waiting to be discovered. And here's what's really interesting. When the governments received the probe's images, they did everything they could to hush it up. They ordered the probe destroyed and sealed the probe's data. For many years, people were led to believe that the probe never reached the moon at all. However, some astronauts whisper about what they saw there. A second Earth watching us silently from the shadows of the moon.